Welcome everybody. On a little bit early, so we're just going to allow some time for people to join. And so if you're catching the replay, just maybe fast forward a little bit so you can get right into the start. Welcome, Alexis. How are you? Or if it's someone else from Alexis's team. Welcome. We're glad that you're back for day 4. And we're going to give people an opportunity to join in and get settled, which is great. Hey, Connor, welcome back. Let me check my light here. Welcome, welcome. We're going to get started in just a minute or two. I want to give people a chance to join in. You are in the right place for Financial Foundations to Entrepreneurial Peace. We learn the keys to financial basics and money mastery, and we are absolutely on session number 4 today, which is stakeholder conversations. So I'd love if you have a chance to drop in the chat any takeaways you gleaned from yesterday around pricing. So certainly that's a big topic. We know that people really resonate with that one. I have had some notes and had some conversations after the session yesterday with people really thinking about, how does my business fit? How am I currently pricing things? Am I actually pricing them to make a profit? How am I doing that? So thanks, Sean. Your cash flow issues aren't your client's business. Absolutely. So that's a good takeaway. Absolutely critical. And we're going to dive more into stakeholder conversations today. Thanks, Connor. That's great. Certainly, when we're doing project-based things, we might work through and do quotations for our own purposes by actually forecasting out what are the hours, by thinking through how many members of our team or how many of my hours am I going to be spending, how long should that take, and how much should that cost. And then we're certainly going to do a deep dive for that. We probably are not going to show all of that to our customer, but we are going to be able to use that to leverage and to put our quotation forward in front of the customer as well. Then when we're finished our project, we should be keeping track as we go through the project. We should be then looking back to see, did the amount of hours I said I was going to work on this, does this line up to what I quoted, or did I spend like double the time? And so I've basically given away my time for free by the time we do that. So that importance of that discipline around thinking it through, planning it out, then putting that price out to the customer, winning that business. And then the next step being looking back after to see, did what I think was going to happen, did it happen? Did I underestimate the amount of hours? Did I underestimate any other costs? Another business where that works really well is when you're doing construction. And so making sure you're going through every element of the construction phase, you're mapping out how much materials, how much per unit of it, same thing for time. And you're also building in a contingency so that you've got that covered in case there's some expenses that are kind of overrunning. So thanks, Sean. He's dropped the link for the workbook in the chat. So we've got one more day with the workbook, which is great. I know some of the people who've been joining us live every day this week, they had commitments today, so they're going to catch the replay. So we're going to dive in. We may have some people join us a little bit later on, but I want to respect your time. You are here, you've showed up, and I want to get going with that. So again, give yourselves a pat on the back. You showed up. You made a commitment. You've taken this first step towards taking control of your financial fitness and that of your business. Whether today's your first session that you're checking out live or on the replay, you've already taken the hardest step. So give yourselves a pat on the back. We've had an opportunity this week to really dive into the difference between cash flow and price and profit. We've had a chance to think through how might we do that forecasting for cash flow. We've also been able to dig into pricing 101, which is extremely critical. And we had a chance to talk about yesterday our money stories, and I shared quite a bit of examples from when I was a kid, and I was learning very quickly at like 6-7 years of age that I could use money as a tool, and that I could certainly be able to get things that I wanted by using money. And I had a very unemotional reaction to that. And I just figured out a way to do it. That is not the average story of a child. And so thinking through your money story and how that impacts things when you're asking your clients to pay you, when you're actually setting those prices, and what does that mean and what does that lead to, really, really critical. We're going to have some bonus sessions over the weekend. So our formal training wraps up tomorrow, where we put all of those keys together and we talk about everything we've really done this week and those final messages we want to take away. On Saturday, we're going to have a Q&A, very open forum, same time, same place, 11 a.m. Eastern, to join for that Q&A. Sunday is a very special segment as well that I know people really resonate with, especially if talking about your money story yesterday brought up some things for you. So we're actually going to get into the mindset for entrepreneurial piece. And I'm going to talk about scarcity versus abundance mindset, what that looks like, how that shows up in your life, as well as some questions you can ask yourself to diagnose what is mine. And if you're not happy with the way your mind thinks and your relationship to money, I'm going to actually walk you through some steps to be able to change that. And so that's usually a really popular session. I know it's nice weather out, so some of you will be catching the replays versus joining me live, but I'm still going to be there live. So I encourage you to pop by if you're free. If not, please do catch the replay. Monday, we're going to go into client case studies. So you can hear some examples of when people were working with me, what was the experience? And then certainly on Tuesday, we're going to have just a bonus kind of wrap up. And then we're going to get back to our serving our clients as usual after Tuesday. So I highly encourage you to keep coming. Tomorrow's the end of our formal training. It will be the very last day in your workbook. So before we dive into stakeholder conversations, I want to just remind you, back on page 15 of your workbook, there are Young Money podcast episodes with some really great topics around entrepreneurship, some things that you may want to take in a little bit different capacity. So we've got things like how to evaluate your financial situation and plan for controlling your cash, the top 3 biz money mistakes to avoid, how to price your product and service. So kind of a supplementary training that comes at it a little bit different. Financial planning for business owners. We have an excellent financial planner, Jason Pereira of Woodgate Financial, in that episode, talking about how, when, why, and what it can do to change your personal and financial situation for your business when you're working with a financial planner. And then we've got some small business spotlights. And for some of you, and I know that I was talking about this with one person yesterday on the phone prior to our session, I'm an activator with SheEO. It's an organization that was founded in Canada where women investors put money into women-led businesses, and the investors get to pick who actually receives the funding. And so we are both activators in that space. And so I've got a series of interviews as well, featuring all of these female founders. I think there's about 11 or 12 interviews. And so you can hear different experiences from Canada, the US, Australia, and New Zealand to be able to just learn about other issues that are facing businesses. So they're not just for women. The issues are very much the same across all businesses in terms of the financial aspects. And that's what we really dig into. The important thing to know when you're running a business is that you're not alone. Absolutely, you need support, you need a network, you may need a coach, you want to have people who've done what you're trying to do already so that you can learn from them. You don't need to make every mistake yourself. You can learn from things that have not worked for other people. And so those series of interviews give you a really good chance to do that. So that's on page 15 of your workbook. And then on page 16 of your workbook, we're going to touch on that a little bit today as well as tomorrow, but those routines we want to put into place as we start putting into practice more rigorous financial oversight and regular attention to our finances. So that's on page 16. And so this workbook, this is the cover, what it looks like. This is going to be a great resource for you this week, but also into the future, because you're going to be able to come back to it and be able to glean those key messages and recall what notes you were taking. So if you weren't at the sessions live and you didn't take notes on the replay, we're also sending out recaps of the workbook pages every single day. If you check your inbox, it might be in your spam. They're coming out around 4:30 Eastern every day. We've got the link to the recording. We've got the link to the pages of the workbook. So you've got access to all of that information. And I encourage you to grab that, download it. We will be taking the replays down next next week, next Tuesday or Wednesday. So I encourage you, if you are wanting to catch up and watch those replays, please do so, because they will be coming down at that time. Just checking the chat, no questions so far. So I'm going to proceed and keep moving along. So today we're really digging into stakeholder conversations. And so I gave kind of a funny example yesterday, funny, but not funny. I know it provoked a little bit of a chuckle, but it's not funny in reality. And that's what Sean raised actually in the chat. So if I'm calling my customers, I'm trying to get them to pay their outstanding receivables, the invoices I've sent, they've kind of ignored them, and I'm not really sure what's going on with that. I'm not calling and coming from a place of, hey, Connor, could you pay your invoice? I can't make payroll this week. My cash flow is tight. Could you just do me a favor? That's not the conversation we want to have. We want to have a conversation that's issue focused, and the issue being, we entered into agreement. I provided my products or services, and you were going to pay me for them. I've delivered my end of the agreement. You haven't delivered on yours. And so it's not about being confrontational. It's about being very issue focused on what is happening and talking about, hey, this has happened. How can I help you process the payment? Did you misplace the invoice? Can I resend it to you? How can we get that payment done today? What are your plans in terms of making that payment? And that's the way we frame it. So keeping that in mind, and we're having all these kinds of stakeholder conversations with money. So at the top of your workbook on page 9, certainly we're going to talk about, and we're going to list off a couple of these potential stakeholders that you're going to have money conversations with. So the first one is our clients. Okay, so that's that example. I've provided you really great service. You told me you enjoyed it. Please pay your invoice. So number 1 is clients. Number 2 is suppliers. And suppliers have a very vested interest in making sure that we have cash flow, we're making money, our business is profitable when they're dealing with us. And so if we're a newer company, or there's been some concerns about our company before, some suppliers might choose to wait until we can pay up front before they're going to deal with us. As we build up a relationship over time, we are going to then see that switch and have a change happen, as well as just general financing terms. They may want to do a credit check on us if they're going to extend us credit. I was talking with a client yesterday, and she was sharing that they have credit terms with one of their primary suppliers, and they have to pay at the end of the month. So all month they can order the product they need. They do window tinting, and so they're able to get that all month, but they do have to make that payment at the end of the month. So planning for cash flow is absolutely critical, so that that payment can be made and that credit arrangement can be continuously available. The first time they miss that, and I'm not suggesting that this client's going to do that, but if you do have a credit arrangement and you're not living within the terms of it, that can go away very, very quickly. Number 3, employees. So it's not that they are necessarily seeing your financial statements or they know your financial position, but employees can tell from your business, from your demeanor, from your attitude, how things are going. Okay. And they very much care because they want to get paid every week or every 2 weeks or however it is that you're paying them. And so they very much care. Number 4 is your bookkeeper. So they're doing work for you, organizing and entering your financial results, and you need to have conversations with them. 5 is your accountant, same kind of thing. They're usually doing your tax returns and your annual financial statements. And then number 6, a banker. Okay. And so it's posted there in the chat, just that recap. So clients, suppliers, employers, bookkeeper, accountant, and then our banker. And so the number 1 mistake made when talking with stakeholders is entrepreneurs focusing the conversation on their insecurities and doubts about money and their financial acumen. My doubts and insecurities have no place being in a conversation with any of those stakeholders. I might need to ask questions, I might need to clarify things, and that's okay. Everyone's learning all of the time, and that's all right. But we want to keep the conversations issue focused. So the next part, kind of 2/3 down the page in your workbook, is focus the conversation on the right thing and stop making it about you. Okay. It's not about me right now when I'm trying to collect payment on my invoice that I've sent my client. It's not about me. It's about them living up to the arrangement we have in place and making sense of that. Okay. So I want to give you a couple things. Last time when we ran this training, and I've had a few conversations with people lately, also in the Cash Control Bootcamp that we've been running with our clients around financial disclosure with employees and how much of that we're going to have. And so, as I said, employees are going to know how things are generally going. They're going to get a sense. They're going to know if you're stressed. They're going to know if you're delaying payment on some bills and what's going on. When I was in university, I used to work at a family-run restaurant. And while payday was Thursday every 2 weeks, we only actually got our paycheck and our money when there was cash in the cash register. And so they also prioritized adults who were not students with kids, then adults, then students. And so payday is Thursday, I might not get my money till next Tuesday because there wasn't enough cash flow being generated in the business. And that is not an ideal situation. Okay, that's not the kind of situation we want to put our employees in. So we don't want to alarm them. If we are having cash flow challenges, we want employees to feel safe. We want them to be focused on their work so they can do the best job possible. On the flip side as well, sometimes employees might become jealous. If we're doing really well and the owner starts taking vacations, maybe they have a fancy car, they've got a fancy house, whatever it may be, sometimes employees will feel entitled to a greater share of that success. Even though they may be paid very fairly, they might receive bonuses, have really great benefits. There's just that sometimes people feel that natural, well, you're getting that, I deserve some of that too. And so we actually did an episode on Biz Money Talks with Hilda Gann, and she talked about ways and strategies that we can deal with that. But I've seen it firsthand with some of my clients that when things are doing well, whether or not financial information is shared, there's this run on employees coming to the leader looking for raises. And it can become like a weekly, monthly thing. So as long as the business looks successful, they're going to keep asking for these raises. So one of the keys around that is, again, focusing on the issue. You're a great employee. We very much value you. As we talked about when you join the organization, we have performance appraisals that we do on this frequency. Annually, we assess your compensation. You have a bonus structure in place, you have benefits, and we've done a scan of the landscape out there from a competitive standpoint, and we know that you are making on market for your role, for your experience, blah, 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 blah. So when we're clear, when we hire employees and we let them know that, when they come to us and they're looking for those things, we revisit it. We remind them about the expectations that we've set, and we're not going to be able to make everybody happy at times. And so in one client situation was really unfortunate. One employee was actually instigating the remainder of the employees to really kind of bully the boss to demand these raises. And so if you've got a person there who's behaving in that manner, it's time to remove them. And Hilda talked all about that. There may be times though with your employees that you may want to share some disclosure with some of them. So with your sales team, you're probably going to share sales numbers and you're going to set sales targets. Do they need to see all of your expenses in the bottom line and that profit? Not necessarily. With senior management, so you may have a team, smaller team surrounding you and a larger team in the organization, you might share more information with senior management and less with more junior staff. It really comes down to your relationship with them, how you trust them, what you think their intentions are. But I can tell you from my experience working at TD, one of Canada's big 5 banks for so many years, I've seen companies in financial distress, seen so many different behaviors. I can tell you that unless you've seen somebody backed into a corner, you could not imagine how they're going to behave when they're financially stressed. And so that can be an employee, that can be a customer, that can be a supplier. People will do pretty much anything. And if you always pay your bills, if you're always treating everyone respectfully and honorably, that will be a big shock to you if you've never witnessed that kind of thing. So nothing's off the table or nothing's kind of out of bounds. People's behavior really varies, and it can be quite surprising when money comes into play. So just want to put that out there so people are realistically thinking about things and what kind of conversations to have. As I said, we don't want to talk about and bring up our insecurities and our doubts about our money and our financial acumen. It's okay that we're learning. We're doing the very best that we can. We've started our business because we're excellent at what we do. We're going to focus on the conversation on the right thing. So if it's the employee asking for a raise, we're going to revisit our policies as a company. We're going to talk about the frequency that we're going to look at them. And if it is something out of the blue, maybe somebody's got another job offer, maybe it even came to them unsolicited, you're going to evaluate it. And depending on that person's value to you, how long they've worked with you, what your relationship is, you might revisit it at that time. If it's somebody who's chronically asking for raises, you might just shut them down and say, we're going to revisit that in November, because that's when we look at raises and compensation increases. So focus it on the right thing. Don't make it about you. What is the issue? So if we can stop being people focused, whether it's us or thinking about them, focus it on what is the actual problem or the challenge that we're talking about. Now, I get so many questions from entrepreneurs around, I'm not even sure where to start. I know I'm supposed to look at my numbers. I know I'm supposed to communicate with my accountant and my bookkeeper, but I don't know what to say. And so that comes up pretty regularly. Someone mentioned it yesterday as well. And we heard it earlier in Cash Control Bootcamp. So I want to really go through a few questions. These are on the bottom of page 9, and these are some standard questions that you can put in your back pocket. So when you're having those kinds of meetings, you can actually bring them up and talk about them, okay? So the first one, when you're talking to your bookkeeper or your accountant, and so maybe you've received the numbers or you're seeing them for the first time, and you say to them, what do you notice when you look at the numbers? So we want to hear all their experience and insights and what they're actually taking away from that look. The second one, how do these numbers look compared to other companies of a similar size and similar industry? And so you don't need to know even what your numbers say, let alone what other people in the industry or similar size companies say, but you're trying to get their insight and their experience. And I can tell you, I do this kind of day in, day out. The first thing I do when I'm working with clients on a private basis is I do a financial assessment of their performance. I look at the multiple years of their financial statements. I compare them to industry benchmarks for companies of similar size, similar industry, and I rank them and rate them and tell them what that means in terms of financial performance, financial ratios, financial metrics. So you can glean a lot of things, especially if they tell you, you know what? Because we were talking about yesterday about break even, and we talked about sales minus our variable cost gives us our gross profit. So they might say to you, you know, your gross profit is way lower than other companies in your industry. What's going on with those expenses? Can we talk about that? Excuse me. And so you're going to be able to get some clues about when you go back and you dig into your financials, what are you going to look at and what are you going to start with? Okay. Yes, Sean. Hey.
Yeah, I have a question about comparing to industry benchmarks and things like that. From the bank's point of view, like when I've done stuff with a bank and I have to choose an industry, it's always like very general, like just advertising or something like that, right? So how, like, do you try to compare a business to another business doing the exact same thing, or is there a little bit of leeway there?
Good question. And there would be no way probably for you to know this if you weren't a former banker like me. There are actually standard industry codes. So the short form is SIC codes. And there's North American Industry Classification, something NACS codes. So I'm just going to post the names here in the chat just for you to look at. SIC codes or codes. I think I got it right. So SIC codes or NACS codes, and they get very, very detailed. So anybody who's listening, you can just Google what's the SIC code listing, SIC, SIC code, and you can actually bring up a complete list, and it starts at like broad industry, and then it drills down into every kind of specialty, and you can find the exact code for what you do. If you do a bunch of different services that are kind of bundled together, that will be, you might have to look at a couple and see what's most comparable. You might have to look at your revenue and see which revenue represents the biggest percentage of your business and go with that one. So I was just talking about this with a client on last Thursday. They have a motel, but they also have a restaurant. So we could, and they're on the water. So we were looking at both resorts and motel type SIC codes, but we were also looking at casual dining restaurant codes because the bulk of their revenues actually comes from the restaurant. And so when you do that, you're able to actually see like what's the standard gross profit. So that's sales minus variable cost. What's the standard percentage of sales that net income is? What is the amount that they spend on advertising from a percentage standpoint? And then we can actually see all the benchmark kind of industry average ratios. So if we're talking about, do people have enough cash to pay their bills? What's the standard for that industry? And so certainly we can talk offline about that. We can dig them up and take a peek. But if anybody is interested, just Google standard industry code or industry classification, SIC code, or the NAICS code, NAICS, and you'll be able to drill down and find something. I think, Sean, what you're referring to when you probably fill things out for the bank, they're just looking for the broad strokes. But when you actually have a lending relationship with a bank, they're going to ask you a lot more questions, and then they're going to use something like this big detailed listing, and they're going to dig into that to get the right one. And when you are going for a loan, this is a little bit off track, but it pertains to what we're talking about in terms of how we're dealing with bankers. They're going to run your financial statements. They're going to take them, enter it into a software, usually through like a rating agency kind of database like Moody's. And they're going to enter that SIC code or that NAICS code so that the software knows which industry to compare it to. And they're going to answer a series of questions. But then when the ratios for your company, say, Sean, spit out, it's actually comparing to what the industry benchmarks are that are for everybody who's in that database. And there are actually books. So I have books that I've purchased, online books, obviously, but that are continually updated with the most recent industry benchmarks, and you can look at them for a 1 year, 3 year, 5 year track record per industry. And so there's like hundreds of pages based on every little slice and dice of an industry. So good question, and not something that most people know. So there is actually a way. Go ahead, Sean.
Oh, sorry. No, I was just saying thanks.
Oh, okay. I was looking quickly in the way my glasses were. So yeah, it's a good question, and having that knowledge, which really helps you, because if you weren't aware that banks are going to do all these things when you go in to apply for a credit facility, you might not be prepared. Or if you're in a business that you know people might on the surface not think about the right way, you'd want to be very clear and specific when you're talking to them to make sure that you can absolutely pinpoint what you do so that there's no confusion about that, and so that they're clear, because they may not know very much about your industry. And so you want to be as clear as you can. And if you happen to know your own code, which has never happened to me in all my years of lending money, but I mean, that's even better. If you can say, you know, I know my business is a little bit unusual, I'm not sure how it fits, I think this might be the fit. And that can actually help them. So that's a little bit of a sidebar, but I think gives you a good background about you being credible as a business leader, which is so important. And so we've talked about, what do you notice when you're looking at my numbers? How do these numbers look compared to other companies of similar size, similar industry? And then the third one that you might pose to your accountant or your bookkeeper, if you were the owner of the business, are there areas or things you would be focused on maintaining or changing? So now you're actually asking for their very specific insights. Hey, do you see any things that I'm doing well and I should keep doing? Or do you see things that I'm not doing so well and I really need to dig into and address it? And you've got now an expert who's looked at thousands of financial statements who's able to do that. Okay. So really good questions for your bookkeeper and accountant. And these can get you over the initial, I'm not sure what to ask them. Okay. Once you start getting answers to these questions, you're going to have more questions. And I guarantee that while you might feel nervous initially and you might feel a little bit apprehensive, once the floodgate on the questions is open, the questions are going to keep coming, because every time we're learning more, we're just taking our knowledge to the next level, and we're going to have more and more and more questions. Okay. Nobody knows everything. And so we can always get deeper on understanding certain things, and we can get into nuances. We can also then move it into more of a strategy plan. And we're digging into that a lot in Cash Control Bootcamp this week, as we were talking about suites of offerings, as we looked at our pricing, which tied into what we did here in Biz Peace training yesterday. Were we making money? Which offerings do we have? Which product or service brings us the most margin? Should we do more marketing around these sorts of things and kind of back off on this? We still need to provide this because people in our industry expect a company to have this offer, but we want to focus on that because we make more money. And so thinking through, and so it stops becoming the finance piece on the side of the desk. It's everything in your business is then driven by the numbers and the financial results. And so once you can understand it, it's all certainly cohesive, and it actually changes the way your mind is thinking about your business, which is really cool. So I know so many of you already this week have had takeaways. You've had action items you were putting in place, and you've sent me info to share your progress. And that's really inspiring for me, to know that we talked about something, you took that big first step to get here, you found something, and you actually put it into action. And it's not about wholesale, massive change, doing everything at once. It's all these small opportunities and activities that you do daily, which really change the trajectory of your business. And so jumping on to page 10, I don't see any other questions here, but feel free to raise your hand, unmute, pop them in the chat if you've got questions. If you have any and you're watching on replay, send me an email. Would love to hear from you, as well as later we'll drop the link so you can book a call, so we can talk about your implementation plans for what you're learning. So on to page 11, the key takeaway from today is what I want you to think about right now. Am I avoiding any conversations with the key stakeholders that we talked about? So those being our clients, our suppliers, our employees, bookkeeper, accountant, or banker. Am I avoiding any conversations? So if I am, how can I reframe the discussion to focus on the issue and approach it from a place of confidence? So if, for instance, you've got those employees coming to you demanding raises, we can send over that link to the Biz Money Chats session with Hilda Gann, where she actually talked through how do we frame that conversation to keep it issue focused, talk about what we do in our company. If it's about calling clients and getting collection of those outstanding invoices, how do we frame that conversation? And so all I want you to do is think about and jot them down in your workbook. Are there conversations you are avoiding? Maybe you have a client that when you first started dealing with them, you gave them a low rate to get in and do some work with them and get them to see how great you are. And now it's time to revisit that arrangement. Are you going to renew it as is, or are you going to have the confidence to say, you know what, we've been working together for this amount of time. I've already gleaned from you, and you've shared that you're very happy with my service. I was doing that so we could kind of get things started. I'd like to continue working with you on these terms. Okay, and so it's not necessarily a renegotiation, it's revisiting. If you had a contract in place and it ended, it's just the start of a new negotiation. I've also heard people kind of call it a reoffer. And so I'd love to keep working with you going forward for the next 3 months. I can see it on these terms, and this would be the rate, which I think I've proven my value to you, and blah, 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 blah. And so how do you do that to focus on the issue, but come from a place of confidence? So what are those items you can jot down in your workbook, which are so key? And so for action items, make a list of the conversations you've been putting off or want to regroup on them. And in terms of action, I want you to take today. I just want you to contact one of them and set a time to have that conversation. Okay, so just contact one of them and set the time. You're not having the conversation. You're going to book it for next week or the week after. You're going to prepare yourself. You're going to think through all of the things you might say, all of the things they might say, and get ready. Maybe you're even going to role play it if you're nervous with somebody in your life. Okay. And if that's one of the big challenges for you, I'm happy to get on an implementation call and talk through how we might do that and how you could frame that. So make a list of those people where there's conversations you've been avoiding, and reach out to one of them and book that time to have that conversation today. Okay. So that's stakeholder conversations. I think hopefully that's given you a flavor where you can start to see there's me as business owner, and then there's me when I'm working with these stakeholders, and how do I present myself? How do I communicate the things that I need and I feel and I think? And by keeping it issue focused, we can maintain our credibility. We can still ask questions. We can still be open to learning, and we don't need to share all of our insecurities with everyone. And it's very common with the clients that I work with to hear those things, like I was talking about the receivables, like, hey, can you do me a favor? My cash flow's tight, blah, blah, blah. I need to make payroll. Okay, so we want to change that conversation. And it's just a new routine, like anything else, adding new vocabulary, preparing for those calls in advance. Maybe it's even jotting it down and keeping it. If you're on Zoom, you've got a sticky note on the side of your computer just to remind you until that kind of framing becomes second nature. Okay. So we've gone through 4 days already. Tomorrow we're going to wrap up. We're going to have day 5, which is putting into practice your full set of keys, which is going to be great. And I'm very much looking forward to that. And then we're going to have those bonus sessions, as I mentioned, over the weekend. So Saturdays, Q&A with me. Sunday is that mindset for entrepreneurial piece. Monday is client case studies. And then Tuesday, we're kind of wrapping it all up before we get back to our regular business stuff and kind of where do we go from here. But today I absolutely want to make an invitation to you to think about what actions have you already taken this week. You've already stepped up. You made that decision to show up. You decided you wanted to take control of your financial future in your business. You realized that now is the time. So thank you so much for attending. I am so pleased that you joined me, whether it was live or you're on the replay, and that you're going to catch us tomorrow and maybe those bonus sessions as well. But I really appreciate it. And it's been inspiring for me to see the actions that you've already taken. We have a very exciting announcement today. We are opening enrollment for our Cash Control Bootcamp. And so we do have a scholarship winner who's going to be able to join us in the program, and that is Angela Stewart. So congratulations, Angela. I know you weren't able to make it live today, but you will have a complimentary enrollment to our Cash Control Bootcamp. And so with the newfound confidence that you have all built up over this week, we kind of have this fork in the road. You can take what you've learned, go out, implement it, be able to work on that on your own. Or you might have realized, you know what, I was able to do a lot this week with this short training and these high level things that I've seen with this workbook that Tracy's provided, and I know I need more support. So the question really to you is, how are you going to be able to implement those changes? How are you going to be able to do that in the future? Will you be able to go as fast? Will you be able to go as quickly? Is finance the stuff that you've been putting on the side of your desk and you're never getting around to? Or do you know with support that you can make it happen? And I know that this is just the beginning of your financial foundation, financial fitness journey. You've really kind of started it off, you've kickstarted. And I know though that many people abandon the journey without someone to help them navigate. So I want to run through details of the Cash Control Bootcamp. As I mentioned, Angela Stewart will be enrolled with us. We are kicking this off, and just to give you a little bit of information around it, it is a 6-week live online group program. We are meeting together on Zoom just like we are right now. We're kicking things off on July 8th, 12 p.m. Eastern. It runs for 6 weeks on Thursdays at 12 p.m. Eastern. And we're reading for an hour and a half. We're going through some trainings. We've got some worksheets. We've got some templates. So it's less about what's up here, and we're actually putting it into practice and how does it come into play for your business. And so we're going to dig really deep on understanding the difference between that profit cycle and the cash flow cycle in your business. There is a template to create your cash flow forecast for your business. And in the round we're running right now, there's been lots of eye-opening observations around, wow, I knew it in my head kind of, but now that when I put the numbers together, it's a little bit harder, but this is really meaningful. And now I'm able to change my strategies as I move forward. So how can we do that? Now, when we've got the numbers in there, what are the strategies we can put in place? How can we use this to quickly make decisions in our business? And so it's less about the theoretical and more about the practical. How can we actually put this into use? We go really deep on pricing. We have a pricing tool so that you can actually figure out how much money are you making on your different offerings, so that it's not, I think, I feel, kinda, I'm not sure. We're going to make it tangible so that you can double down on the things that are going well, where you're making money, tweak things that are not making as much money or actually losing money, as you might imagine. We talked about yesterday that 85% of the clients, when they come to work with me, are losing money on their products and services. And so as we work together That changes, and that enables them to get steady paychecks in their business. So it's about learning the nuts and bolts, but it's more about what comes from that. What comes from that is greater profitability, greater financial flexibility, greater confidence, faster ability to make decisions, and the ability to integrate what's happening in the numbers with the big overall strategy of the business and use those as kind of a guide and a map to get you through where you want to move through into the future. We also dig into profit leaks, where we're going to see money kind of leaking out of our business, as well as go forward routines and kind of putting it all together. And so we start with a pre-assessment to kind of measure where you are. We finish up with a post-assessment so you can track your progress through that. In every session, it is completely interactive. We're a relatively small group so that you can ask the questions that are important to you, as well as we have 2 office hour sessions that are drop-in for an hour. We've got them on July 27th and August 10th, so that you can ask those questions that might pertain to what you've been working on, or there might be other questions. And I can tell you that it's really about the people in the training. And so whatever questions they have, even if it's not on topic for what we're doing that week, we're going to answer it. Because you need to be able to gather the information, the knowledge, so that you can lead effectively in your business and take control of that from a financial standpoint. And so, as I said, you've got 2 choices right now. I would love for you to join me in the Cash Control Bootcamp. You've got a couple of weeks before we start. You might be taking a little bit of a break over Canada Day if you're in Canada, or in the US over July 4th, and then we're going to kick things off. The way that people proceed and the transformation that takes place, it's night and day. That confidence that comes from it, and just knowing that you don't have to know everything, and you know enough to make decisions, to stand up for your rights, to make changes in your business, and make the kind of business that you really want to have. So it's getting you the financial results you want to have. Sometimes what comes out of it is that you're going to work less and focus on higher margin, more money making activities, and you're going to actually scale back your activities when you have that information to be able to make that sight line. So I would love for you to join us for this 6-week online live boot camp. It's led by me, so you're going to have lots more of the same, but certainly more in-depth conversations. The office hours are led by me, so you're getting the benefit of all my years of experience lending money and approving credit for companies, and certainly what I'm seeing in the market at all times. And one of the things we hear quite regularly, and we hear it through the Biz Piece training, but certainly through all our client engagements, is that this is the first time they've had financial training with someone who makes it simple, straightforward, it's not condescending, and it's at the level you need. And so whatever level you are at is where we're going to meet you in that training. And so I highly invite you to join us. I would love to hop on the phone with you. So Sean's going to drop the link for you there, so we can have an implementation call. The point of this call is, 1, I want to hear what are your plans to be able to implement what you've learned this week. To be able to put it into practice, because I want to make sure that you don't just put your workbook away and all that great work that you started on the financial side of your business falls to the wayside. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about your plans for achieving what you have, and if the Cash Control Bootcamp is the right fit for you. And so it may not be the right fit for everyone. And so us having that conversation allows us to figure out if that's the right place for you. We certainly do have other offerings at the company. And so we need to talk about if this is the right place for you, or if there's somewhere else that's a little bit better fit for what your needs are. And my big goal is to make sure you're taking away what you're learning and you're actually putting into practice. So would love for you to book a call if you're thinking about it even a little bit, or you're just not sure. Hop on, get a call with me booked, and let's talk through that. If you know now's not the right time, it's not the right fit, maybe in the future that will be a thing. I really appreciate you coming all week, taking action, very inspiring, and join us tomorrow as we wrap things up as well. So excited to make this invitation to you. We have a lot of fun there, and certainly the results are really exciting. So if I don't see any questions yet, and I know it's a lot of information we've talked about today. So we've gone through stakeholder conversations. How do we keep the issue focused? I've introduced the Cash Control Bootcamp, which is the 6-week live online program. I would love for you to join us. It is live just like this, so you're not watching modules on your own. It's interactive, it's live, lots of support there as well. And we've got our scholarship winner, Angela Stewart, who's going to join us. So again, congratulations to Angela, who'll be catching it on the replay, as well as finally just want to invite you to that implementation call. So let's talk about your plans. Let's talk about how you're going to make them a reality and if the Cash Control Bootcamp is the right fit for you. So with that, I'm going to sign off for today. I'm going to stop the recording. So if anyone has questions live, I'm certainly here to answer them, but my schedule is opened up. So would love to talk to anyone who's thinking about it in the least or wants to know how to make those implementation steps concrete in their business. So I will see you tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern. Have a great day.